Well, I think one thing that's interesting about interactive marketing, which is where we specialize, is that people think that it might be easy, or people perceive it to be a different way. So I hope that today's session will give you a better idea of the environment that interactive marketers face. And when I say interactive, I mean primarily online. And we'll talk a little bit about the challenges that marketers face in the industry today with their customers and kind of the conversations they have to have and campaigns they have to launch. But first, I wanted to start off with a simple question. All right, so we have a lot of marketers in the room. Who can tell me what the ultimate goal of marketing is? Create awareness. What else? Satisfy customers. Getting there. Sales. To drive sales. Isn't that right? When you satisfy your customers, when you create awareness, you drive sales. Right? So all of the marketing organizations that you look at around the world, for all the different respective organizations, everyone's trying to make money, everyone's trying to drive sales, whether it's construction equipment, whether it's clothing, whether it's donations, whatever the case might be, it applies to everyone. Ultimate goal of marketing is to drive sales. So as a part of driving sales, marketers build campaigns, right? So who can tell me what a campaign is? It's just these slides, the entire presentation. So let's get the dialogue going. What is a campaign? You can tweet it if you want, if that would help you feel better. That's great. A strategy using forms of communication to drive an outcome, right? A business outcome of some kind. And if the ultimate goal of marketing is to drive sales, the ultimate goal of a campaign would be probably to drive sales in one form or another. You get a lot of campaigns that drive awareness, drive brand advocacy, that kind of stuff. Can anyone tell me what's happening here? What's that? Oh, wow, didn't expect that one. Waiting for the new iPhone. That's right. The iPhone 5 has arrived. Did anyone wait in line to get one? You know what I think is incredibly interesting about what Apple have built is you see all of the campaigns, promotions, the launch schedule, the secrecy. A lot of people think that the marketers driving the communications, that are driving the strategy of how Apple goes to market, look like this, right? They're the traditional advertising executives. They're sitting in a room thinking about really, really cool, creative ideas. A lot of people perceive this is what marketing is, this is what advertisers do. And it is true, advertisers used to dictate what a brand was, what it means, and when they communicated to their consumers. And I think it's important to remember where we came from. But I think the reality of what marketing looks like today is a little bit more like this. Eating at your desk at lunch. A little bit more like this, checking Facebook before you go to bed at night. And really, there's a bird in the room up there. That's a new audience member of mine. And what's changed is that what brands are today is the sum of the conversations that are happening about that brand. Don Draper does not have control over what a brand means in the market. And I think that's really interesting to remember. And one really interesting thing about Apple, just to bring it back and talk a little bit more about how they've created this following and created this experience. No, obviously all of you are students, so you may not remember the old days of Apple, where it was a lot of just what they would call fanboys, people who would buy Apple products just because they loved Apple products. What's interesting about Apple is they use a way of measuring customer satisfaction called Net Promoter Score. Does anyone know Net Promoter Score, how it works? Okay, so Net Promoter Score, basically, primarily how it works is they'll survey their customers and say, how likely are you to recommend Apple to a friend? Right, 1 to 10. So in determining who their advocates are, they take anyone who answers 9 or 10. I am 9 out of 10 likely to recommend Apple products. They take the people who score 7 and 8 and they throw them out. And then they look at people 1 to 6 and they subtract that from the people in 9 to 10. And they look at the percentages and they say, what percentage of people are highly, highly likely to recommend? And I'm going to subtract that from the percentage of people who aren't highly likely to recommend, who are the detractors. Right? And so what Apple have done is use this metric as the only way to measure their employees in their retail stores. Right? So they say, well, you know, you didn't get that promotion because your Net Promoter Score of all the customers that you've engaged with simply wasn't high enough. Right? So what is the business outcome that they're trying to drive by doing that? Satisfaction. What else? Loyalty, repeat purchases, advocacy. And what does all of that drive? Sales. That's right. It drives buzz, it drives sales. So that's a really, really interesting thing. And I think if you look at how marketers measure success, you'll see that very, very few marketing organizations actually do this well. Can anyone guess what Vodafone's Net Promoter Score is? Less than 0. It's less than 0. They have more detractors than they have advocates. Right? So if you use it as a metric, you use it to drive decisions. So another thing that I'm going to talk a lot about today, and again, you know, I'll probably skip around a little bit, but hopefully it'll come across, is that if you remember anything from how marketers measure, from today's presentation and how marketers are measuring success now, the most progressive organizations are using what are called a customer-centric approach to measuring success. Tools like Net Promoter Score are becoming increasingly important in how they drive the business outcomes that they want. Because at the end of the day, you can launch a campaign, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. You can launch a campaign that uses a great strategy and uses all the channels that are effective for your business, that has an amazing message, an amazing offer. But at the end of the day, if it's not relevant to the customer, it doesn't matter. Right? So that's what I'm going to try and get across. So we've got some time together. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I love interactive marketing, why I got into it in the first place. I'm going to tell you where the company I work for and that I'm representing today fits into that. I'm going to talk about email marketing, which may not be very exciting to any of you, but I think you'll be high-fiving and chest bumping after the meeting about how great email marketing is after today. Hopefully, that's like what I'm picturing in my head anyways. And I'm going to talk about the approach that we take to work with our clients. And I think when you see some of the clients that we work with, you'll find it to be pretty interesting that in what they do and kind of how they use email to drive revenue to their business, to drive sales. And then we'll look at some case studies. So first off, why interactive marketing? Why did I choose it? Why does it matter? What's kind of changed in the market? I think, you know, when you look back maybe 25, 30 years, I know it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but these are the channels that marketers had to communicate with consumers. And these are the channels that people like you and me would use to actually go out and figure out what brands were reputable, what actually means something. What do you notice about all those channels? Not a trick question. None of it involves the internet. That's a very, very good observation. Most of them, that's a ticket right there. Most of them are one way. Actually, I debate that almost all of them, with the exception of telephone, which really was one way if you have ever experienced a telesales call from someone, they are all one way. Now, what's interesting is through time, what happened? The advent of the internet happened, right? Two-way communication became more of a reality in the digital world. And what happened was, guess what? The more technology took off, the more channels consumers had to communicate with brands, to engage with people online. And now in 2012, consumers have 40 plus ways that they can communicate with brands, that they can make purchases, that they can make buying decisions on. How many people, when they buy something online now, actually go directly to the website, directly to the product, and just buy it? Right? You use, really? For everything you do? Okay. And what other channels do you use? How else do you determine what you're going to buy? So a few options, right? And I think with the pervasiveness of search, the pervasiveness of comparative shopping sites, all that kind of stuff, you know, as a marketer, someone who could potentially be going into marketing, PR, whatever it is, I mean, that chart on the right there, that's what you're facing. Those are the options that you have, right? So you're going to go work for a company, probably. Most of you will. And they're going to say, yep, we have got a killer idea for a campaign. Now we need to get it out in the market. But guess what? The marketing team is 2 people who control all of this, and they have 47 channels that they can use to communicate. So it's a challenge, right? And this is the challenge that, you know, I work to solve. And another thing, when looking at sales and what drives sales, who's ever had an experience in buying something that felt very personal? You felt like you connected with someone. Okay, I think it leads perfectly into the next question. Does anyone know what this means? This is a very corporate phrase. I apologize for even using it. But I think I'm trying to get to a point. What does achieving scale mean? So she bought hair curler online, great experience, personalized message from the owner, constant communication. How does that align to achieving scale? First off, what does achieving scale mean? Tough crowd. So achieving scale in the corporate sense of the word is, how do we take that experience and replicate it for when we have 100,000 customers? How do you do it? It's not going to work for 100,000 customers. She doesn't have the time, right? And if you want to maintain that experience, what do you have to do? You have to invest in technology. And, you know, this is kind of the example I present to clients a lot. You know, it's a bit self-serving, I know, but it's talking about what is the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's, you know, in looking at what happens in an email program, what a lot of people look at is they have newsletters, you get promotional emails, you have different communications that you receive from brands. So, you know, obviously one of the most important things is when I opt in to receive those communications. But what a lot of brands lose sight of is what happens in my life that is dictating buying decisions that I make or methods that I use to engage with brands, right? So, you know, about 1.5 years ago, I moved to Sydney. I've looked at, and this is for a travel company example, right? So we're talking to a travel company. So I've looked at hotels in Melbourne, because I go down about a day or two a month. I tweet about a trip I booked to Vietnam. I booked my parents' hotel, et cetera, et cetera. There are all these different touch points and levels of engagement that I have with a brand, right? And one of those is booking through this particular company's competitor, right? What organizations are really struggling with, in my experience, is that they may have 500,000 or 1 million customers, and they are trying to figure out all of this information about each customer, right? It's tough. And so I always challenge them and say, where are the touch points that you've got, right? And so what we promote, what we talk about is building what we call the customer life cycle. So you've got all of these different touch points that will reach out to me and make me feel special, but they're actually not going to be individually handwritten from the owner, are they? It's not going to work. So does anyone know what we use? How do you begin to do that? How do you achieve scale in communications? Thoughts? Research, okay, that's good. And what does research give you? What does analysis give you? Insight. It gives you data, right? So as an organization, I'm not going to talk too much about really what our technology does, but the foundation of what we focus on as a business is data. So there are points in time in which I am going up and down in terms of engagement. So if you think of, maybe think of a store that you're loyal to, right? Maybe you think of a clothing store. And think about how often you go to that store. How often do I actually buy? Okay, well, they have a spring and fall sale. They'll usually send promotions out. So I'm buying, once every 6 months. But maybe I buy a little bit more often than that because I really like what they have to sell. So what I always find interesting is how little people know about the data brands are actually collecting about you, right? So they know how often you buy. They know how much you spend. They know when you go to the website, when you open an email, when you click on an email. They know all this stuff, right? So what data do we have? This is not meant to freak you out at all. This is just what people know about you. And this is what they're using to go and research and analyze and understand. Okay, well, I know that Eric opens emails on Tuesdays, or he opens emails 15% of the time that we send it to him, or he's looked at a specific category of products, or he's X years old. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. And he's a male, right? So they're going to use that to determine what communications they send. And that's really where we come in, right? So we talk about all of these different elements that organizations have. And there won't be a quiz on this later, but this is what an enterprise technology stack looks like. This is the types of technology systems that they have. They need to report up to the business how much product are they selling, how are they reporting on their KPIs and metrics, how are they communicating with their customers. So they have call centers, they have CRM, customer relationship management, and then they have tools that allow them to actually communicate with their customers through online and offline channels. Does that make sense? Okay. Am I losing anybody? Feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to change direction here. So I wanted to just talk quickly about where we fit into this. And I think, when people ask me what problem are you solving, one of the big stats that I always throw up is that 1 in 2 marketing executives, so I don't know what your aspirations are, but if you ever want to be a marketing executive, this will likely continue to be a challenge for the foreseeable future, is that they have trouble understanding what people are doing across channels. So when I say channels, I mean, how are they engaging with us online, in-store, offline, on different devices, etc. If you think about, how you go about your day, most of you would probably have a smartphone or an iPhone or Android or Galaxy S3. And the reality of it is you have all these apps, right? And these apps allow you to seamlessly navigate between Facebook, Twitter, email, text, whatever it is, seamlessly, right? The problem is marketers can't do that. They can't always know where you are. And that's actually really, really hard to do. It's a really big challenge. So this is what we do, right? So we enable marketers to integrate that data, create a cross-channel common view of their customer, and allow them to understand in real time kind of what that is. Now that's a big, hairy kind of beast, and we can go a lot deeper into that, but that at a high level is what we do. And we use that data to go across the different channels that we support, which is online, email, marketing, mobile. So whether it's SMS or push notifications or online kind of forms and stuff, social media, and then website-related activity. And we're a software company, so we provide technology. And inherently what comes out of that is people need to know what the heck to do with the technology. So that's where we get involved. Just some of the brands that we work with globally. I'll show you a couple of case studies and examples later. But a really wide variety of industries that we work with across retail, travel, media and entertainment, Daily Deal. Don't shoot the messenger. We do send a lot of their emails. Technology, etc. So really where we see a really, really important thing happening is in what we call the point of interaction. So, how many people actually like a brand on Facebook? You've actually clicked like for a brand on Facebook. What about follow a brand on Twitter? Okay. What about, raise them. Come on, let's get some activity going. What about subscribe to an email program from a brand? Right. That's about right with the numbers that we've done. So in the numbers we've done in Australia, about 96% of all consumers are opted into an email program of a brand. Right? So email's really, really important, paramount to what we do. About 48% of people like brands on Facebook, about 6% of people follow. So really interesting stuff, but we help brands manage the communications with their customers through those channels. The next question is why, right? So why do people choose to work with us? Why do people choose to engage in these channels? And I think it really comes back to the earlier point, which is relevancy drives return. It drives sales. So when we look at the types of communications that you can launch, it's all about using the data to create a more relevant communication. And what's interesting is in looking at how the marketer has changed, as marketers, you may or may not relate to this. What's interesting is that in the blast approach, so when you launch when you launch a billboard or you launch a print ad, you're blasting that out to everyone. You're not opening it up for the dialogue back. You don't understand, what type of people are actually engaging with that message, right? But as you use more and more data, the marketer changes from the, company is what that says. So changes from the company controlling what the message is, moving to the customer controlling what the message is, right? And so when you look at brands that are really doing it well, where you feel like you've connected with them, where you've had a personal experience, you feel like they know who you are and they know what you've done, right? And in order to take that to the level of 100,000, 500,000, a million customers, you have to use data to do it. So that's our platform. That's the only bit of technology I really talk about today. But this is the suite of tools that we've built to kind of support marketers in doing that. So real-time dashboards, calendars to kind of see, you know, what activity is happening across all the different channels, what emails are we sending next week, what tweets and Facebook posts do we have scheduled to happen over the next couple of weeks, etc. So we are a technology company that provides insights around all of this stuff, right? Does that make sense? Getting a few head nods, that's good. Okay, that's it. That's it on the company. What I want to talk more about is why the hell do you do email marketing? So why would a company do email marketing? And I wanted to just talk briefly on that. Has anyone received an email from any one of these three brands? Yes? No? No? Okay, wow. Interesting. So three very different companies, Nike, TripAdvisor, and News, all customers sending email through our system, all using it in incredibly different ways. So I wanted to highlight a little bit more on how email is used within their businesses to kind of drive sales. Right, so how does Nike make money? Sell products. Pretty easy, right? How do TripAdvisor and News make money? Service fee? Yep, okay, yep, news subscription. Advertising, right. And how do they make money advertising? They sell ad spots. And how do you sell ad spots? Anyone know? What's that? I guess it's more of a general question. So basically how you sell ads is by having an audience, right? You can't sell ads on a website that gets 10 page views a month, can you? Not very successfully anyways. So they need page views, and they need to know who their customer is in order to sell those ads. They need to use that data. Nike need to use data to understand who's buying what so that they send the right product to the right person, right? We help them do that. So the next thought that you're probably having in your mind is, I get tons of emails from people that don't seem relevant to me at all. It can't be that hard, right? Anyone have any favorite emails that they get every day, that they always open? Yes. What's that? ThinkGeek? Yes. You know who sends those emails? We do. Anyways, who else? Yes. Who's that? Pedestrian TV. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And that's with the latest content from the last day? Okay. Great way. What else? Mumbrella. Oh, right. Okay. Great. Yeah. Great publication. Anyone else? Okay. So there's some interesting things that those companies have in common. Does anyone know what that might be? There's always new content, first of all, right? And because that content is new, it's immediately relevant. But I think, you know, really the common thread of making an email program successful is relevance. So that's a really big thing. Has anyone ever been creeped out by an email sent by a brand? Anyone? You don't want to share your experience? You don't have to share the website. Just no one? Oh, man. You must not be doing a good job. So I think there's an interesting debate on how much data is too much, right? So I talked about all the data points that you have on your customer, of the customers that we work with anyways. You know, they always ask how much is too much. So if someone looks at a product on the website, can I just send them an email like an hour after that saying, hey, I saw you looked at this product, do you want to buy it? You know, that might be too much. Our mantra is spooky, not creepy, right? So spooky is like, oh my God, I was just looking at that product. That's weird. Creepy is like, whoa, chill out. Yeah, let's back up. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at. So if I look at the TripAdvisor email, and TripAdvisor is an amazing, amazing brand in terms of how they market, how they reach customers, what their business model is, and how they've built such a massive audience. In looking at one of their campaigns, I find it really interesting to see where is the actual marketing going on. Because we talk about email marketing, you know, there's got to be some like marketing that's actually happening. And, you know, marketing in the common sense of the word, you know, why are we sending this email? What is the reason? What is the outcome that we're trying to drive? And who can guess what the outcome TripAdvisor trying to drive is? What's that? Booking trips? Ooh, what's their business model though? Advertising.
Yeah, they try to get people to post and blog and like specific places in the world, so other people can go on and put advice.
Yeah, that's right. So they try to generate all this user-generated content, which in return, you know, drives the bottom line, which is sales, right? But the whole premise is based on user-generated content. So when I look at their email marketing strategy, they've done some really interesting things. I'll talk a little bit more about this later because I think it is interesting. But I just wanted to break this email down for you to say, yeah, actually email is pretty hard to do well. And what you'll notice is the top banner of the email is actually my profile information, how many reviews I've posted on the site, what level of reviewer I am, how many helpful votes I've gotten, which is not very many. I don't write very good reviews, obviously. My friends' activity, related flights for where I live. Right? This is all stuff that is sent with one email to 8 million people 3 times a week. Right? So, I mean, just imagine the amount of data that requires in your head. The number of records required to crunch this email is pretty powerful. So, if I've got 6 reviews, that's 6 records, 4 cities, 2 helpful votes. Okay, 2 friends, 2 reviews, 10 flights, all related, times 8 million for every single email. It's a lot of data. And what I think is most interesting is the reason for this email, which is, hey, 10 great wildlife tours. That doesn't happen. You can't even see the entire promotion in the email. Right? It's because the level of engagement they get in click-throughs, which is really the ultimate of the ultimate design of this email is like, how are we going to get people to the website to drive impressions? Impressions drive ad sales drive revenue. So they're trying to drive engagement, and they do it really well. So this is the problem that marketers face, right? Who loves data? Loves it. How do you use data as a marketer? You guys are marketers, right? PR. How do you use data? Give me an example. Okay, so I want to understand how the business is doing, right? I run a business, I'm the CEO, you're the CMO. I want to know how things are going from a marketing perspective. What do you do? What do you look at? CMOs have a budget, right? They have to allocate that budget to the different channels to do what? Drive sales. They have sales targets they have to hit. How do you think they determine how budget is allocated? How do you think the CEO determines how much budget that CMO gets the next year? Yeah. Success. Yeah. Sales. Right? And I think that is in itself is a challenge. I think, marketers today just have too much data to work with, generally speaking. And this is just a whole nother set of data that a marketer has to decide what to do with. So if I'm going to up my sales targets, right, I need to figure out how I'm going to get more sales. A lot of businesses today, against our advice, say, well, every time I send an email, I make 10 grand or 100 grand. So what do you think they do? They send more email. Simple, right? More email equals more revenue. Who likes to receive more email from brands? Right? Well, sometimes you might, right? But it's got to be the right brand. And what determines if it's the right brand or not? But that's right? It's got to be a brand that you relate with, right? So the more emails you send out it does not equal more revenue, right? And you have to use data around behavior, previous purchases, demographics, all that information. And it's not, it's really majestic, the bird. It doesn't just come in a spreadsheet, right? Extra layer of animation. So, anyone familiar with the term relational data? Marketers hate data, don't they? Because it's very hard to work with. It's very hard to decipher, right? So if you look at, for example, let's talk about social. You look at the data that exists in social. Everything you tweet exists in the world forever as a data point, right? Number of retweets, number of replies, geography, where you live, what device you posted from, right? This is the challenge, making sense of it. And I just wanted to highlight, here's an example of an email which looks incredibly simple, doesn't it? It's got products that someone has purchased online. It's got 4 recommended products based on what they bought. And then it's also got the reviews, the ratings and reviews for that product. Pretty good email, isn't it? It's very engaging. Really sort of creates a good experience. It took 6 months to build this email. 6 months of IT resources, of marketing strategy, of planning with all the partners that we had to integrate with. 6 months from start to finish. It's tough. Another element where email comes in to become a strategic part of business is multi-step sort of follow-up programs, right? So in your example of getting the handwritten note, getting follow-ups, really engaging with you as a customer. A lot of big brands around the world use data to do this, right? This is how people are using email to drive sales. Actually, 94% of online purchases are influenced by a review. Has anyone bought a product online that got a really shitty review? I don't think so. You don't, right? Have you bought a product without any reviews at all? Yeah, so a few. But if it has good reviews next to it, and let's face it, most brands that post reviews, they always get concerned. Like, what if there are bad reviews? I'm actually more likely, personally, to make a purchase if it's got 5 good reviews and 1 bad, right? Because you know it's legit, right? So that's what we tell them. But reviews are really important. So, you know, in this example, 21 days after purchase, you've had time to sort of digest it, use it, you know, play around with it, whatever the product. I'm not really sure. Don't want to use any examples, but you're given the option to go back and review that product. And what happens is not only are you going back to engage with the brand online, it's a very engaging email, very specific to what it wants to do, but that will also drive repeat purchases. So when you think about how email is used, it's a retention channel. It's used to keep, retain, and grow customers, right? And this is a great example of it doing that. Does that make sense? Questions on that? What do you guys think? Initial thoughts? Did anyone know this much about email before they started? Okay. All right. That's good. I think, you know, last sort of thing to wrap up email here is why do it? He's having a good time up there. And it comes down to making money, right? Everyone's here, well, I should say, most companies are here to make money of some kind. Email is actually the most, well, I guess, drives the highest return of any marketing channel because it can use the data you've got on your customer. There's so much data out there, you can integrate it all to drive a relevant communication. It's more high performing than search. It's way more high performing than a billboard or a print ad in a magazine. And it's very strategic in how marketers use it. So, you know, the numbers kind of represent that. Yeah, so we're going through this transformation, and that's, you know, that consumers are hyper-connected. You know, marketers are struggling with all the channels and struggling to stay relevant. And the marketing spend, so the budget we spoke about earlier, is shifting from print and offline media to online. Because guess what? $40 for every dollar return, every dollar invested. You know, when you're actually making it's about 2 to 1 for direct mail, maybe 3 to 1. Not going to be really competing for budget there. So it's interesting anyways. I mean, you know, offline media will always be there, but you do start to see budget shift. Okay. So I'm running a bit short on time. I think I'm going to go straight to the case studies, unless you guys have any questions. But I wanted to, well, actually, I'll go through this stuff because I think it's interesting. Okay. Images off with email. This is kind of a fun topic. Can anyone guess what brand this is? No idea, right? Images off with email is kind of interesting. Open rates, drive conversions, kind of fun. I'm not going to tell you who it is because it's, but I just wanted to share some examples of cool things that people are doing. This is kind of fun. Mac makeup. The email on the right is what it looks like with images off. So there are some kind of fun, quirky things you can do. But who would open that email? Everybody. Like, that's super cool. Another example, Pizza Express in Europe. Just some really good examples of how marketers sort of maximize design in email to drive conversions. What we call bulletproof buttons. Anyways, really interesting stuff. Thought that might be worthy of mention before we hop to the case studies. This mouse is backwards. Okay. So last thing before we dive into the case studies. Oh, crap. Prugh. Jesus. I did want to cover off, the final step in all of this is looking at what programs marketers need to run. And, these programs are typically how we work with customers to kind of decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to optimize email for mobile? Are we going to look at the email clients or devices that people are using? This is how we work to kind of prioritize where marketers start. Anyways, kind of interesting. We have a whole philosophy. I'm not going to go too far into it. Okay, case studies. This is where it kind of gets interesting, and hopefully it will drive some dialogue in the last few minutes we've got here. So Target. Any big Target fans out there? Yes? Does anyone know the story I'm about to mention? No? Dear Target, could you possibly make a range of clothing for girls 7 to 14 years that doesn't make them look like tramps? Posted on the Target Facebook wall. Okay, you are the PR marketing executive. What would you do? What would you do in this scenario? Very disgruntled customer. Can anyone see how many likes it got? 80,000 likes in less than 24 hours. What would you do? Does anyone know what happened? Yeah, it somehow disappeared from their timeline. It came back, but they said, oh yes, it was flagged with inappropriate material, so we weren't able to address it for 70 hours. It sat on their Facebook timeline without anyone addressing it. So you would have replied directly to this person? No? Yes? What's the right thing to do? You're the marketer, figure it out. It's all about what outcome you're trying to drive, right? So this obviously is a bad thing, but the reality of it is it's there and it can't ever go away if you want to maintain some semblance of a reputation. So what they actually did, I forgot to paste in the slide, what they actually did, they never addressed the person specifically, and they replied 70 hours later saying, we understand that there has been some criticism about our children's clothing. We'd like to let you all know we go through a very rigorous process, etc., etc. Never addressing the person directly. Whether they handled it correctly or incorrectly, we'll never know, right? It's subjective. How about this one? Last night, last night in the U.S., there's all the presidential debates going on, and between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. So the KitchenAid alias during the debate. Are you familiar with KitchenAid? Okay, similar to a Breville or online or home cookware, if you will. Tweeted from their North American presence to 20,000 followers. Obama's grandma even knew it was going to be bad regarding his presidency. She died 3 days before he became president. Not very tasteful, was it? So what would you do? Obviously, this was not intended to be published from the brand's Twitter profile. What would you do? Say you got hacked. Hey, that's as good a suggestion as any, I suppose. What else? Apologize? Apologize? Few apologies? Well, that's what they did. Deepest apologies for an irresponsible tweet that is in no way a representation of our brand's opinion. And they did delete it. Right? Additionally, the head of social at KitchenAid actually took ownership and said, I'd like to personally apologize. My name is Christine Soledad, or whatever her name is. I think they handled it pretty well. I'm not sure what you think. Last example, got a couple minutes here. Surf Stitch. Anyone's shop on Surf Stitch? Man, do you guys buy any? Okay, you do. You buy anything online? Okay. Very, very big online retailer, gotten a lot of praise on their use of technology. I love their Facebook page and how they use it. But if you guys like squint, see, you're regretting sitting in the back now, I know it. Can you see what is common about all of these posts to their Facebook wall? Does anyone take a guess? The word thank you. Oh, I didn't think of that. That was a good one. The reply. Who's first to reply on every single thread? Surf Stitch, the brand, right? And they have a very big personality about them. It's, they always sign it with an X, a kiss. Really interesting. But this is what brands are doing to kind of build up their reputation and service. It's not always going to be perfect. In fact, and I love this example, they had a massive sale. And this is an example of cross-channel coordination of a campaign, right? Where they said 30% off, 300 minutes from 300 brands for today only, for 5 hours. So for 5 hours, you could buy something online. Anyone want to take a guess what happened with all this coordination? The server crashed. 100,000 hits in 10 minutes after they published the campaign. It took the site down for 8 hours, beyond the time of the sale, right? Not an ideal situation. So what would you do? Actually, the only way they had to communicate with their customers was via Facebook. So what would you do? Apologize. Seems to be good. What would you say in the apology? I mean, they're not going to get their 30% off, clearly. Extend it. It's a good idea. They actually did that. One of my favorite responses ever. Oh, you can't see it. I've got to fix it. They actually took a photo of their staff with their heads down and posted to Facebook while the site was down. And there are a couple interesting things that happened about this, and as a marketer, I think you'll love it. Someone actually posted a comment, "Hey, I love that dress. Is it on the site?" And they're like, "Yeah, go on and buy it when we come back online." Really, really interesting. Another one, someone posted on their wall, "Surf Stitch down, fix yourself a drink and quit whinging," right? So they have a very loyal fan base, and they used it to their advantage to really handle what is as big a crisis you can have as an online business. Okay, last one. I'm getting the hook pulled on me here. TripAdvisor. Okay, so they were struggling to drive traffic to the website, struggling to keep people on the website. What would you do in that situation? How do you keep people on the website? And there was a hint up earlier on ways that they did this. Traffic equals dollars. How do they do it? This is a tougher one. I saved the toughest one for last. No idea, really? Email, okay. Yep. More relevant email, sure. What do they do on the site? Not many big TripAdvisor users here, obviously. They added Facebook login. Man, that helped. Facebook login added all of the destinations that my friends have reviewed and rated on the website. How's that for engaging? Talk about keeping people on the website. Another way, friends' most popular destinations. What they also did is they used email. They introduced an email that said, "Hey, someone's been reading your reviews, and guess how many helpful votes you've got? 0. Maybe you should write some better reviews, right? Very, very engaging. So I'm gonna leave you with that. I think the last bit I want to leave you on is that the most progressive organizations are taking this idea of customer-centric marketing and applying it to their strategy, right? So any organization you come into, you have the knowledge and capability based on your experiences to do this, right? And really what you want to become as an organization is a customer service company that happens to sell X, like Zappos in the US. And you want to avoid this experience, right, as a company, when you forget about your customer and then, you know, they move on, right? Cool. Well, thank you so much. Any final questions before I go? Good, helpful? Good idea what people are doing? Cool. Thanks, guys.